In this video, we're going to show you how to debug a custom step using Visual Studio. In order to do this, you want to make sure that you're running Flowrite in your own developer environment with Visual Studio running so you can easily attach to the process and debug. So in this case, I have this custom step that I have built, and you might have seen this particular one being built in another video. Now we want to, let's say, debug into this step. If I go into my Flowrite, I have, let me go ahead and log in. I have already done all the auto detect and configured the step. And I have this process definition called add two numbers -adl. And simple little workflow here. And here's my custom step that I have. So I'm going to go ahead and, let's say, we'll change these values to some values here, value 1 and value 2. Save that, and we're going to go ahead and save this also. And we're going to create an instance and execute it. And I'm going to go ahead and say generate. And before I click on create and execute, in order for us to jump to Visual Studio, you want to make sure that you go to services, and you want to keep all the Flowrite, especially the process engine service, shut down, because otherwise what will happen is as soon as you create an instance, the engine is going to pick it up and process it automatically. And also, if you have another machine that's processing workflows out of this database, you want to make sure that the machine is also not processing. So in this case, you can see all my services are turned off. And now let's go ahead and create a new instance. So I'm going to go ahead and say create and execute. And if I say view instance, you can see my instance says executing. It's not processed yet. And if I go to my instance list, you can see it still says executing. So what we want to do is we want to run the engine manually. And under this execute menu, you can say run engine. But before we do that, we are going to attach the Visual Studio debugger. In the old version of Flowrite, we used to attach the debugger to the W3WP service, which is the IIS service. But in Flowrite 10, it works a little bit differently. How IIS acts more as a proxy because ASP.NET Core is running its own process. So we want to connect to that process in order to debug this step. So I'm going to go to debug, and I'm going to say attach to process. And this attach to process, I want to be able to connect to the process called Flowrite.ui. So if you just go to this list and click the F, it should jump to the first item with F. So you can see we have Flowrite.ui.exe. We want to attach to that. If it gives you trouble or any error messages trying to connect to that process, you want to make sure that you're running Visual Studio with administrative privileges. So let me go ahead and say attach. And if everything is good, you will see this little icon, this debug little icon, turn into complete solid red here. And now it's ready to debug. So all we have to do is go back to our Flowrite UI, and I'm going to say run engine. And as soon as I do that, you can see it jumps into the code. And here I'm getting value 1 and value 2. So let me just step over these lines and show you the values. So value 1 has 345 and value 2 has 787. So I'm going to go ahead and say, yep, go ahead and calculate. And we'll store that in a result in a variable. And that's it. We're done with the step. And if I just click the play button, and it should go back to Flowrite UI. And if I refresh the screen, you can see it has completed executing. You can also just double click and go and view the graphical view of it. So here you can see all the details. And if you go to this step and look at the properties of this step, we should, as soon as this comes up, we should see the values. So let's go to properties, and in this case you can see the values we provided. and you can see variable the result is equal to 1132. And this is how you would debug a custom step. Same process to debug, if you want to debug data type, event handler, business object, any of those items. You want to make sure the services are turned off, and then you want to make sure that you connect to the Fluoride UI process from the Visual Debugger, and then execute some code that will use that component, and you should be able to debug that code in Visual Studio. Thank you for watching.